The children's mercury experiment is what it was. It was not an amalgam trial. It was an experiment on children, an experiment. Well, these contemptuous professors out in the University of Washington, DeRuin and Martin, proposed to the government that children would be more likely to show the effects of a neurotoxin faster. They said amalgam isn't needed anymore, but they would like to know the effects. The government forked over $11 million for this and a similar study where they picked out the black kids in Boston and the poor white kids in Maine and did a similar experiment on them. The group picked in Portugal. And understand that the Portuguese diet, since the Romans, long before the Romans were there, is fish, of course. This was a seaside orphanage, so they knew they were getting mercury already. So they wanted to pick an area where the kids already had mercury exposure. They picked an orphanage because they could get one signature for all the kids, which is illegal under U.S. law, but they went overseas with their grant. They finished their experiment in a short period of time. They then claimed, but years, because they wanted to make money every year, they ignored the fact that the boys were now mercury toxic, who will therefore conceive children with mercury toxicity, will have mercury toxicity issues throughout their lives. They refused to report that. They were dishonest in their findings, and they said, we don't see an effect. They also removed out the children with neurological issues or nephrotoxic issues, kidney problems, which a dentist would never screen out, and then they proclaimed it safe. When called before the panel in 2006 after receiving millions and millions of federal dollars to defend their study before the scientific panels, DeRuin was such a chicken he didn't come. He took his millions of dollars, wrote a report, and refuses to defend it, except his big contracts he and Martin get from the American Dental Association for so-called consulting. During the process, DeRuin and Martin testified before the King County, that's Seattle, the King County Commission that amalgam is safe. They sat with the American Dental Association opposite the opponents, Sandy Duffy, the president of our board, Dr. Paul Janung, a dentist in Seattle, saying it's unsafe. DeRuin and Martin sat there and said it's safe. This was before their data were out. They're testifying it's safe. I called the toxicologist, James Wood, and I said, what the hell's going on here? They are testifying before they're done. He said, I thought that was a mistake. I told him that. I said, James, why don't you fire them? He said, no, I work for them. So what is this guy's? What is one of these guys that wants to study amalgam as mercury his whole life because he makes money? So he comes out with one report, it's safe, and the next report it might be a little bit unsafe, and he goes back and forth decade after decade just drawing in cash and cash, and he looks like he's open-minded, and he's open-minded to the cash. Yes, we filed a complaint, Randall, with a tiny federal agency called the Office of Human Research Protections. It's an agency to determine to stop Eichmann-type experiments on children and others by so-called scientists. And we filed a complaint, and their findings were, A, that there was not consent given to the children or proper consent under U.S. law, but B, the University of Washington will clear it up next time. And that was enough for the Office of Human Research Protections. There's a violation of law, but they promised not to do it again. The FDA, however, says fine. We'll cite the trial because it helps us. Our goal is not real science. Our goal is we want to protect amalgam, so we will cite whatever we can, including this gruesome experiment on children, the black kids in inner city Boston, the poor white kids in the state of Maine, and the orphans in Portugal.